I stared at the polished mahogany conference table, my hands folded carefully in my lap, as Bradley Thompson cleared his throat. The sterile fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across his angular face. 14 years. 14 years of my life poured into Midwest Logistics building their route optimization system from scratch training managers who now ran entire divisions. I had saved this company $3 million last year alone through my innovative hub design. But here I sat listening to this new CEO explain why my salary needed to be cut 25% effective immediately due to restructuring. His cold smile never wavered as he spoke about budget constraints, that $15,000 Rolex glinting on his wrist, catching the light like a slap in the face. The meeting ended with Thompson's dismissive nod, as if he had just discussed the weather rather than slashing my income by $15,000 annually. I walked back to my corner office in a daze, my mind struggling to process what had just happened. The hallways felt longer somehow, the familiar burgundy carpet and cream walls, suddenly foreign territory. Sarah Martinez from Human Resources caught up with me near the elevator bank. Her usually bright demeanor replaced by something I had never seen before, genuine concern mixed with barely contained anger. "Joanne, can we talk?" she whispered, glancing around nervously. "Privately." We ducked into the empty break room on the third floor away from the executive suite. Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she poured herself coffee she clearly did not want. "You were not the only one," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "Frank Rodriguez in the warehouse got the same treatment this morning, 25% cut, and Janet Walsh from compliance yesterday." My stomach dropped. Frank had been questioning the new safety protocols. Thompson implemented protocols that violated several OSHA guidelines, but saved money on equipment costs. Janet had been flagging regulatory issues with some of Thompson's cost-cutting measures in transportation documentation. "Sarah, what about everyone else? Are there more cuts coming?" She shook her head, her expression growing darker. "That is what makes this so wrong, Joanne. No one else. The accounting department is actually getting bonuses this quarter. Marketing got budget increases. Even the janitorial staff received their annual raises last week." The pieces began falling into place like a puzzle I desperately did not want to solve. This was not about budget constraints. This was about silencing dissent. "There is more," Sarah continued, her voice dropping even lower. "Thompson hired his nephew Derek yesterday. Strategic consultant position, $150,000 starting salary." "Derek who?" "Derek Thompson, 24 years old. His resume lists 3 years managing a sporting goods store in Ohio, 0 logistics experience, 0 supply chain knowledge. Thompson created the position specifically for him." I felt the blood drain from my face. While cutting my salary, Thompson was paying his unqualified nephew more than I had ever made in my 14 years of dedicated service. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife. That afternoon, I sat alone in my office reviewing the quarterly reports I had helped generate. Our profits were up 18% from last year, largely due to efficiency improvements I had implemented across our Midwest distribution network. The Kansas City hub I had redesigned was processing 30% more volume with the same staffing levels. The route optimization software I had developed was saving the company approximately $200,000 monthly in fuel and labor costs. I pulled up my personnel file on the computer, scrolling through 14 years of performance reviews. Every single evaluation rated me as exceptional or outstanding. I had received commendations from regional managers, thank you letters from major clients, and recognition awards from industry associations. 3 years ago, when our primary competitor tried to poach me with a $40,000 salary increase, Thompson's predecessor had matched the offer and promoted me to senior operations director. Yet here I was being punished for what appeared to be nothing more than existing as a potential threat to Thompson's agenda. My phone buzzed with a text from my younger sister, Emma. "How did the quarterly review go? Dad says you were nervous about the new CEO." I stared at the message, unsure how to respond. How could I explain that my life had just been turned upside down by someone who had been with the company for exactly 6 weeks? How could I tell her that the career I had built brick by brick was being dismantled by a man who clearly valued loyalty to him over loyalty to the company? Instead, I typed back, "Still processing everything. We'll call you tonight." The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of routine tasks that suddenly felt meaningless. I approved shipping schedules, reviewed driver logs, and responded to emails about delivery delays, all while my mind raced through the implications of what was happening. 25% less income meant I would need to reconsider my mother's assisted living arrangement. It meant postponing the kitchen renovation I had been saving for. It meant accepting that my 14 years of expertise were worth less to this company than nepotism and fear-based management. As 5 o'clock approached, I gathered my things and prepared to leave. Walking past Thompson's office, I could hear him on a conference call, his voice booming with confidence about streamlining operations and optimizing human resources. Through the glass wall, I could see Derek sitting across from his uncle, nodding enthusiastically at concepts he clearly did not understand. Driving home through the familiar streets of Kansas City, I tried to make sense of everything that had transpired. The tree-lined neighborhoods looked the same. The traffic patterns followed their usual rhythms, but something fundamental had shifted in my world. For the first time in 14 years, I questioned whether Midwest logistics deserved my dedication. That evening, I called my mother at Sunset Manor, the assisted living facility, where she had moved after Dad passed 2 years ago. Her Alzheimer's was progressing slowly, but she still had good days when her mind was sharp and her humor intact. "Joanne, sweetheart, you sound tired. Long day at work." "Something like that, Mom. How are you feeling today?" "Oh, you know me. Still fighting the good fight. Mrs. Henderson from down the hall brought me some of her famous chocolate chip cookies. Reminded me of the ones your grandmother used to make during the Depression. She always said tough times do not last, but tough people do." Her words hit me harder than I expected. Here was my 82-year-old mother battling a disease that was slowly stealing her memories, still finding reasons to smile and share wisdom from generations past. Meanwhile, I was wallowing in self-pity over a salary cut that, while painful, was not the end of the world. "Mom, what would you do if someone you worked for did not appreciate your efforts anymore?" She was quiet for a moment, and I could hear the television playing softly in the background. When she spoke again, her voice carried the clarity that occasionally broke through the fog of her condition. "Honey, I worked for 35 years at the telephone company, had supervisors who treated me like family and others who treated me like furniture. But I learned something important. You cannot control how others value you, but you can control how you value yourself. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from people who do not deserve what you have to offer." We talked for another 20 minutes about lighter topics, but her words echoed in my mind long after we hung up. I spent the rest of the evening researching my options, updating my resume, and trying to calculate how long my emergency fund would last if I decided to make a drastic change. By the time I went to bed, one thing had become crystal clear. Bradley Thompson had made a strategic error. He had underestimated not just my value to the company, but my willingness to accept disrespect in exchange for security. 14 years of loyalty meant nothing to him, but it meant everything to me, and I was beginning to realize that loyalty should flow both ways. As I drifted off to sleep, my mother's words played like a mantra. Tough times do not last, but tough people do. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but it would also bring new opportunities to prove just how tough I really was. Monday morning arrived with an email that made my coffee taste bitter before I even took a sip. Thompson was reassigning my entire team to Derek effective immediately. 12 people I had hired, trained and mentored over the years, would now report to someone who could not distinguish between a bill of lading and a shipping manifest. I reread the message 3 times, certain there had been some mistake. My team managed the operational backbone of our Midwest network, coordinating everything from driver schedules to emergency reroutes during severe weather. These were complex logistics, requiring years of experience and deep understanding of our systems. The second blow came 20 minutes later when facilities management knocked on my door. "Ms. Joanne, we need to help you relocate to your new workspace." New workspace. The young man in the blue uniform looked uncomfortable. "Mr. Thompson requested we move you to Office 412 on the 2nd floor. We have a cart ready for your belongings." Office 412. I knew that number. It was a windowless cubicle in the administrative support section, surrounded by data entry clerks and customer service representatives. Nothing wrong with those positions, but after 14 years as Senior Operations Director, the symbolism was unmistakable. I packed my personal items while my former team members watched through the glass walls, their faces showing confusion and sympathy. Sarah, my lead logistics coordinator, approached hesitantly. Joanne, what is happening? Derek just scheduled a meeting to explain our new procedures, but he keeps calling our freight manifest system the inventory tracker. I wish I had answers, Sarah. Just do your best and document everything. The move to the cubicle felt like a walk of shame. Colleagues who usually greeted me warmly now averted their eyes, clearly uncomfortable witnessing my very public demotion. The cubicle itself was cramped with fluorescent lights that hummed constantly and the lingering smell of someone else's lunch. My new desk faced a beige wall covered in outdated safety posters. Gone was my view of the shipping bays where I could monitor operations and catch problems before they escalated. Gone was the conference table where I had hosted strategy meetings with department heads. Gone was any semblance of the professional respect I had earned over 14 years. Wednesday brought the most insulting development yet. Thompson scheduled an all-hands meeting to discuss operational improvements. I sat in the back of the conference room surrounded by junior staff, while Derek stood at the front beside his uncle. Today, I want to share some exciting innovations our strategic consulting team has developed. Thompson announced, his voice carrying across the packed room. Derek has identified several opportunities to streamline our Portland route operations. Derek cleared his throat nervously and began reading from a prepared presentation. Every single point he made was lifted directly from the cost savings proposal I had submitted 3 weeks earlier. The fuel efficiency modifications, the delivery scheduling changes, the warehouse consolidation strategy, even the projected savings figures matched my calculations exactly. I felt my hands clench into fists as Derek stumbled through my work, mispronouncing technical terms and clearly not understanding the concepts he was presenting. When he finished, Thompson led enthusiastic applause. Brilliant work, Derek. This kind of fresh thinking is exactly what Midwest Logistics needs to stay competitive. After the meeting, I approached Thompson directly, my voice carefully controlled, despite the rage building inside me. Those recommendations Derek presented were remarkably similar to my Portland route proposal from 3 weeks ago. Thompson's smile was ice cold. Joanne, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but we need to focus on innovative solutions rather than rehashing old ideas that did not gain traction. Derek's approach shows real strategic thinking. Old ideas that did not gain traction. My proposal had been sitting on his desk ignored and apparently plagiarized while he publicly praised his nephew for stealing my work. The humiliation campaign escalated throughout the week. Thompson began questioning my decisions in front of other employees, second-guessing recommendations I had been making successfully for years. When I suggested adjusting the Louisville hub staffing for peak season demand, he dismissed it as unnecessary expense. When I flagged potential bottlenecks in our Chicago route during construction season, he told me I was being overly cautious. Most painfully, colleagues I had considered friends began distancing themselves. Lunch invitations stopped coming. Conversations grew stilted and formal. Even Frank from the warehouse, who was facing his own salary cut, seemed reluctant to associate with me. The message was clear: being seen with Joanne could hurt your career prospects under Thompson's regime. Friday afternoon delivered the final insult. Derek sent an email to the entire operations staff, including me, announcing new protocols for my former responsibilities. The procedures he outlined contradicted established industry standards and would likely result in delivery delays, customer complaints, and potential safety violations. I drafted a detailed response explaining the problems with his approach, backed up with data from similar implementations at other logistics companies. I attached relevant case studies and offered to meet privately to discuss the concerns. Before sending, I saved the email in my drafts folder and walked around the building to clear my head. When I returned, there was a message from Thompson requesting to see me in his office immediately. Joanne, it has come to my attention that you are undermining Derek's authority with the operations team. Several employees mentioned that you have been questioning his directives and spreading negativity about his management style. I have been available to answer questions when people ask about procedures they do not understand. That is hardly undermining anyone. Your resistance to change is becoming problematic. Derek brings fresh perspective that this company desperately needs. I need to know that you can support his vision, or if we need to discuss alternative arrangements for your future here. Alternative arrangements. The threat was barely veiled. Support Derek's incompetent leadership or face termination. I looked around Thompson's corner office, taking in the expensive furniture, the awards from his previous company, the family photos featuring Derek prominently. This was the office I had once hoped to earn through dedication and expertise. Instead, it housed a man who valued blood relations over competence and loyalty. I understand your position perfectly, Mr. Thompson. Good. I am glad we cleared the air. Derek has some exciting plans for the upcoming busy season, and he will need everyone's full cooperation. Walking back to my cubicle, I passed the operations floor where my former team was struggling with Derek's new protocols. 3 drivers were waiting for route assignments that should have been ready hours ago. Customer service was fielding complaints about delayed deliveries. The Kansas City hub's efficiency metrics, which I had carefully optimized, were already showing decline. That evening, I sat in my apartment reviewing financial documents and trying to calculate how much longer I could endure this situation. My mother's care costs, my mortgage, my basic living expenses, all depended on income that had already been reduced and could disappear entirely if Thompson decided I was too much trouble. But as I stared at the spreadsheets, my mother's words echoed again. You cannot control how others value you, but you can control how you value yourself. I was allowing Thompson to define my worth, accepting his version of reality where my expertise meant nothing and his nephew's incompetence deserved praise. 14 years of building something meaningful was being dismantled piece by piece. But I still had one thing. Thompson could not take away the knowledge and skills that had made Midwest Logistics successful in the first place. He was about to learn just how valuable those skills really were, especially when they were no longer available to clean up his messes. The question was no longer whether I could survive Thompson's humiliation campaign. The question was whether Midwest Logistics could survive without me. The following Monday brought news that shattered what remained of my tolerance for Thompson's regime. I was grabbing coffee from the break room when I overheard a conversation that was clearly not meant for my ears. Thompson and Derek were in the adjacent conference room, their voices carrying through the thin walls as they discussed staffing plans for the upcoming holiday season. What I heard made my blood run cold. The Thanksgiving rush starts in 3 weeks, Thompson was saying. Perfect timing to make the final cuts. Fire her right before the chaos hits, and when everything goes wrong, we can blame her for leaving us in a difficult position. Derek's voice was hesitant, but eager to please. You really think that will work, Uncle Brad? She has been here so long and people seem to respect her. That is exactly why we need her gone before she can cause more trouble. Her resistance to our changes is infecting other employees. We eliminate her during peak season, blame any problems on her sudden departure, and by January, everyone will have forgotten she ever existed. Clean slate for our new approach. I stood frozen by the coffee machine, my hand shaking as I held the empty mug. They were planning to terminate me at the worst possible time for the company, ensuring maximum operational chaos, then use that chaos to justify their decision. It was cruel and calculated in ways that went beyond simple bad management. Derek continued, What about the operations manual she wrote, the emergency protocols? Outdated thinking, Thompson replied dismissively. We will develop new systems that make sense for modern logistics. Besides, how complicated can it be? Trucks pick up packages. Trucks deliver packages. We do not need some overcomplicated system that only one person understands. I carefully set down my mug and walked back to my cubicle, my mind reeling from what I had just learned. The Thanksgiving shipping rush was the most demanding period of our entire year, when package volumes increased by 400% and any disruption could cascade into weeks of delays. Thompson was planning to remove me during this critical time, not despite the chaos it would cause, but because of it. That afternoon brought even more devastating news. My mother's doctor called with updates on her latest evaluation. The Alzheimer's was progressing faster than expected, and her current medication was no longer effective. A new treatment was available, but it cost $8,000 monthly and was not covered by Medicare. Without this intervention, we are looking at significant cognitive decline within 6 to 8 months, Dr. Patricia Chen explained gently. With it, we could maintain her current level of function for several years. I thanked her and hung up, staring at the numbers I had scribbled on my notepad. $8,000 monthly, $96,000 annually. My reduced salary barely covered my mother's current care costs, leaving nothing for this new treatment. If Thompson fired me before Thanksgiving, I would lose my health insurance and have no way to support her at all. The walls of the cubicle felt like they were closing in as I contemplated my impossible situation. Stay and endure continued humiliation until Thompson decided to fire me anyway, or leave and lose any hope of affording my mother's care. Neither option offered real security or dignity. I spent the rest of the afternoon documenting Thompson's systematic campaign of harassment, creating a detailed timeline of events with supporting evidence. Part of me hoped legal action might be possible, but I knew wrongful termination cases were difficult to prove, especially when the perpetrator was skilled at creating plausible justifications for their actions. As 5 o'clock approached, I made a decision that surprised even me. Instead of heading home, I drove across town to visit my mother at Sunset Manor. I needed to see her face and remember why I had been fighting so hard to maintain stability in an inherently unstable situation. I found her in the activity room working on a jigsaw puzzle featuring a lighthouse on the Maine coast. Her movements were slower than I remembered, but her eyes lit up when she saw me. "Joanne, what a wonderful surprise. I was just thinking about that summer we visited Bar Harbor when you were 12. Do you remember the lobster dinner that made you so sick?" I sat beside her, marveling at how memory worked with her condition. She could recall events from 30 years ago with perfect clarity, but struggled to remember what she had eaten for lunch. "I remember, Mom. You stayed up all night taking care of me while Dad complained about the hotel bill." She laughed, a sound that still carried traces of the vibrant woman who had raised 3 children through economic hardship and personal struggles. "Your father meant well, but he never did handle crisis situations gracefully. You got your problem-solving skills from my side of the family." We worked on the puzzle together, her fingers still nimble despite the tremor that had developed recently. As we placed pieces of blue sky and rocky coastline, I found myself telling her about my situation at work, carefully editing out the financial implications for her care. "So this Thompson fellow does not appreciate your contributions," she said thoughtfully. "And he is planning to blame you for problems he created himself." That about sums it up. She placed a puzzle piece featuring part of the lighthouse beacon, then looked at me with the clarity that occasionally cut through her condition like sunlight through storm clouds. "Joanne, I have lived through the Depression, World War II, your father's heart attack, and now this disease that is stealing my memories piece by piece. If I have learned anything, it is that you cannot control the storms, but you can choose how to navigate them." "What do you mean?" "This Thompson man thinks he can use you as a scapegoat for his failures. But scapegoats only work when the victim stays around to be blamed. What happens to his plan if you are not there when his house of cards collapses?" Her words hit me like lightning, illuminating possibilities I had not considered. Thompson was counting on my presence during the holiday crisis, planning to fire me at the worst possible moment and blame subsequent failures on my departure. But what if I left on my terms, before his timeline taking my institutional knowledge with me? "Mom, if I quit my job, I might not be able to afford your care anymore." She reached over and took my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "Sweetheart, I would rather spend my remaining good days knowing you are standing up for yourself than living comfortably while watching you be destroyed by someone who does not deserve your dedication. Your grandmother always said that dignity is worth more than security, and she was right." We finished working on the lighthouse puzzle as the sun set through the activity room windows. When it was complete, the image showed a beacon shining across stormy waters, guiding ships safely to shore. The symbolism was not lost on either of us. Driving home, I felt a sense of clarity I had not experienced in weeks. Thompson's plan depended on my compliance with his timeline. He expected me to absorb his abuse until he decided to discard me, then remain available as a convenient explanation for his failures. But plans only work when all parties cooperate. I had 14 years of operational knowledge that Thompson assumed would always be available. I knew every vulnerability in our system, every potential failure point, every shortcut that kept operations running smoothly during crisis situations. Most importantly, I knew that Derek was incapable of managing even routine operations, much less the complexity of peak season logistics. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, drafting my resignation letter. Not the emotional outburst Thompson might expect, but a professional document that would leave no room for misinterpretation. I set my departure date for the Friday before Thanksgiving week, giving me just enough time to secure alternative arrangements for my mother's care. As I typed, I thought about my mother's words about navigating storms. Thompson had created this storm banking on my fear and dependency to keep me trapped. But storms affect everyone in their path, and the person who creates the tempest is rarely immune to its destructive power. By midnight, the letter was complete, short, professional, and devastating in its timing. Thompson wanted to use me as a scapegoat, but scapegoats only work if they are present for the sacrifice. Come Monday morning, Bradley Thompson was about to learn that 14 years of loyalty could not be replaced by nepotism and hubris. The decision was made. Now came the challenging part, executing my departure in a way that protected my dignity while exposing the fundamental flaws in Thompson's leadership. He had underestimated my value for the last time. Monday morning arrived with an unusual sense of calm that surprised me. For the first time in weeks, I felt genuinely at peace with my situation. The resignation letter sat in my briefcase, printed on professional letterhead, and signed with the confidence of someone who had finally taken control of her destiny. I arrived at the office early before Thompson or Derek typically made their appearances. The building was quiet with only security personnel and the overnight cleaning crew finishing their duties. I used the time to complete several tasks that had been weighing on my mind. First, I compiled all my personal files onto a secure drive, ensuring no proprietary company information was included. 14 years of work contained countless personal notes, industry contacts, and professional development materials that belonged to me, not Midwest Logistics. Second, I updated the emergency contact information in our systems, removing my personal cell phone number and home address from the on-call rotation. If Thompson wanted to blame me for post-departure failures, he would need to do it without demanding I fix problems from my living room. Third, I prepared a basic transition document that covered only the most essential operational procedures. Nothing proprietary. Nothing that gave away competitive advantages, just enough information to prevent immediate safety hazards. My 14 years of institutional knowledge would not be handed over as a parting gift to people who had spent weeks demonstrating they did not value it. Thompson arrived at 9:30, his usual swagger, evident as he strode past my cubicle without acknowledgement. Derek shuffled in behind him, already looking overwhelmed by responsibilities he was unqualified to handle. Perfect timing. I knocked on Thompson's office door at exactly 10 o'clock, the resignation letter in a sealed envelope. "Joanne," he said without looking up from his computer. "What can I do for you?" "I wanted to deliver this personally," I said, placing the envelope on his desk. "My resignation effective this Friday." For the first time since I had known him, Bradley Thompson was speechless. He tore open the envelope and read the brief letter, his expression shifting from surprise to calculation to barely controlled panic. "This Friday, that is completely unreasonable notice for someone in your position. You have responsibilities. 2 weeks' notice is standard and professional. My responsibilities will be handled according to company policy. Joanne, let us discuss this rationally. If this is about the salary adjustment, we can revisit that decision. The company values your contributions." The sudden change in his tone was almost comical. Gone was the dismissive executive who had spent weeks undermining my authority. In his place sat a man who was beginning to understand the magnitude of his mistake. "My decision is final, Mr. Thompson. I will spend this week completing essential transitions and training Derek on critical procedures." Derek, who had been listening from the doorway, stepped forward eagerly. "I appreciate the offer, Joanne, but honestly, how complicated can logistics management be? I have been observing operations for several weeks now, and I think I have a good handle on the systems." I looked at him steadily. This young man who had never worked a peak season, never dealt with weather emergencies, never coordinated responses to highway closures or mechanical failures that could paralyze entire distribution networks. "Of course," I replied. "I am confident you will handle everything beautifully." Thompson's face had gone pale as the implications began sinking in. "Derek, maybe you should take Joanne up on her training offer. There might be some details you have not encountered yet." "Uncle Brad, I have got this, trust me." I excused myself and returned to my cubicle, leaving Thompson to contemplate his nephew's confidence. Within an hour, news of my departure had spread throughout the building. Colleagues stopped by to express surprise and concern, many asking if there was anything they could do to change my mind. Sarah from my former team was visibly upset. "Joanne, this is crazy. You are the backbone of this operation. What are we supposed to do when problems arise?" "Follow Derek's guidance," I replied simply. "He is very confident in his abilities." The rest of Monday passed in a blur of administrative tasks and informal goodbye conversations. I could feel Thompson's eyes on me whenever he emerged from his office, his expression growing more troubled as the reality of losing 14 years of operational expertise began to sink in. Tuesday brought the first signs of what was to come. Derek called an emergency meeting for the operations staff announcing new procedures for the Thanksgiving shipping rush that contradicted nearly every established protocol we had developed over the years. He mandated that all Kansas City hub operations run at maximum capacity without regard for equipment maintenance schedules. He eliminated the backup driver rotation that provided coverage for emergencies. Most critically, he suspended the weather monitoring protocols that allowed us to preposition resources ahead of storm systems. I sat in the back of the conference room, taking notes on Derek's announcements, while carefully maintaining a neutral expression. When he finished his presentation and asked for questions, several hands went up immediately. "What do we do if the sorting machinery breaks down during peak volume?" asked Martin from the warehouse. "Fix it faster," Derek replied confidently. "We need to stop making excuses and start making solutions." "But the maintenance schedule prevents breakdowns," Sarah protested. "If we run equipment beyond capacity without proper servicing intervals, we are asking for major failures." Derek's voice took on a condescending tone. "Sarah, I appreciate your concerns, but we need to think more strategically. Every hour that equipment sits idle for maintenance is lost productivity. My analysis shows we can increase throughput by 30% just by eliminating unnecessary downtime." I knew from years of experience that Derek's 30% increase would last approximately 72 hours before catastrophic equipment failures brought operations to a complete halt. But I kept my observations to myself. Wednesday brought a desperate visit from Thompson. He appeared at my cubicle late in the afternoon when most of the office had emptied out for the day. "Joanne, I need to be direct with you. Losing your expertise right before our busiest season could be problematic for the company. I understand your concern. Is there anything we can do to convince you to stay, a salary restoration, maybe a promotion?" "My decision is final, Mr. Thompson." He leaned against the cubicle wall, his corporate facade cracking to reveal genuine worry. "Look, I may have been too hasty with some of the changes around here. Derek is enthusiastic, but he might need more time to fully grasp the complexity of our operations." Derek seemed very confident in yesterday's meeting. "Yes, well, confidence and competence are not always the same thing. Would you consider staying on as a consultant just through the holiday season? I already have plans for after Friday." This was not entirely true yet, but I had been researching opportunities and felt confident something would materialize quickly. Thompson did not need to know the specifics. Thursday morning brought delicious validation of my decision to leave. The Kansas City hub experienced its first significant problem when Derek's new efficiency protocols led to a jam in the automated sorting system. 300 packages backed up on the conveyor belts while Derek frantically searched for someone who knew how to clear the blockage. The solution required shutting down the entire system manually, removing packages and restarting according to a specific sequence that I had developed after similar incidents in previous years. The process took 4 hours instead of the 20 minutes it should have taken with proper knowledge. Derek finally called me to the hub, sweat beading on his forehead as he surveyed the chaos. "Joanne, thank goodness. Can you help us figure out what went wrong here?" I looked around at the scattered packages, the frustrated workers, and the expensive equipment sitting idle, because no one understood how to operate it properly. "Derek, this is a learning opportunity for you. I am sure you will figure it out. But the packages need to be sorted for tonight's delivery runs. We have customer commitments." "Yes, you do." I turned and walked back to my cubicle, leaving Derek to solve the crisis he had created through his overconfident modifications to proven systems. By the end of the day, Midwest Logistics had missed its delivery commitments to 17 major customers, including Amazon warehouse operations and 2 automotive parts suppliers with just-in-time manufacturing schedules. Friday morning, my last day, felt almost anticlimactic. I completed the final administrative tasks, turned in my company identification and building access cards, and said goodbye to colleagues who had become friends over the years. Thompson made one last attempt to keep me appearing at my desk as I packed the final items from my cubicle. "Joanne, I am prepared to offer you a $15,000 salary increase and your old office back. We can work together to make this company stronger." "Thank you for the offer, but I have accepted another position." This was technically true. I had interviewed with Global Express 2 days earlier and expected an offer by Monday. Thompson's face went through several expressions as he processed this information. "You are going to a competitor." "I am pursuing opportunities that value my expertise appropriately." I walked out of Midwest Logistics at exactly 5 o'clock on Friday afternoon, carrying a small box of personal items and a sense of liberation I had not felt in months. Behind me, I left Derek frantically preparing for a Thanksgiving rush he was completely unqualified to handle, supported by systems he did not understand and protocols he had personally dismantled. The weather forecast called for an early winter storm to hit the Midwest the following Tuesday. In previous years, I would have spent the weekend preemptively adjusting routes, repositioning equipment, and coordinating with regional hubs to minimize disruptions. This year, Derek would face his first crisis entirely on his own. As I drove home, my phone buzzed with a text message from Patricia Williams at Global Express. "Offer package ready for Monday morning meeting. Looking forward to having you on our team." Thompson had wanted to fire me at the worst possible time for maximum chaos. Instead, I had left at the worst possible time for him and the best possible time for me. The student had become the teacher, and the lesson was about to begin. Monday morning brought an email that transformed my entire perspective on the future. Patricia Williams, CEO of Global Express, had scheduled our meeting for 10 o'clock at their headquarters downtown. I dressed professionally but comfortably, no longer feeling the need to armor myself against hostile colleagues or incompetent leadership. Global Express occupied a sleek building in the business district with floor-to-ceiling windows and modern architecture that spoke of confidence and success. The lobby featured awards for customer service excellence and industry innovation, a stark contrast to Midwest Logistics' outdated facilities and declining reputation. Patricia Williams met me personally in the reception area, a gesture that immediately set a different tone from my recent experiences. She was perhaps 50 years old, with silver hair and a demeanor that suggested both competence and genuine warmth. "Joanne, thank you for taking the time to meet with us. I have been looking forward to this conversation since our initial discussion last week." Her office overlooked the city's logistics corridor, where trucks from dozens of shipping companies moved in constant streams toward distribution centers and transportation hubs. The view was both practical and symbolic, representing the interconnected nature of modern commerce. "Let me be direct," Patricia began, settling behind a desk that managed to be both executive and approachable. "We have been watching Midwest Logistics for some time, particularly since Bradley Thompson took over. His management decisions have created opportunities for companies like ours to gain market share." "What kind of opportunities?" "Thompson's cost-cutting measures have alienated several major clients. His operational changes have led to delivery delays and customer service problems. Most importantly, his personnel decisions have left Midwest vulnerable to talent acquisition by competitors who recognize value when they see it." She opened a folder containing what appeared to be extensive research on Midwest's recent performance metrics. "Your route optimization work saved Midwest approximately $2.4 million annually. Your hub design improvements increased throughput by 32% while reducing labor costs. Your emergency response protocols have prevented countless service failures over the years. We know this because several of our clients mentioned these innovations when explaining why they remained loyal to Midwest despite Thompson's other shortcomings." I was impressed by the depth of her knowledge about my contributions, information that Thompson had barely acknowledged during my tenure. "Here is what I am prepared to offer," Patricia continued, sliding a document across her desk. "Regional Operations Vice President responsible for our Midwest territory. Base salary, $90,000 annually, 30% increase from your original Midwest compensation. Full benefits package including health insurance that covers advanced Alzheimer's treatments. 4 weeks paid vacation and professional development budget of $5,000 yearly." The financial package was generous beyond my expectations, but Patricia was not finished. "More importantly, I want you to lead a strategic initiative to acquire key clients from Midwest during their current operational difficulties. You understand their vulnerabilities better than anyone, and you know which accounts are most likely to consider switching providers. You want me to actively compete against my former employer. I want you to provide superior service to clients who deserve better than what they are currently receiving. Midwest's problems are not your responsibility to solve, especially after the way you were treated." Patricia leaned forward, her expression becoming more serious. Joanne Thompson made a crucial error. He assumed that 14 years of institutional knowledge could be easily replaced or simply ignored. Companies like Midwest succeed because of people like you, not despite them. When leadership fails to recognize that fundamental truth, they create opportunities for their competitors. She pulled out a tablet and showed me a presentation detailing Global Express's expansion strategy. We have been planning to enter Midwest's strongest markets for 2 years, but we needed the right person to lead that initiative. Someone who understands regional logistics, has established relationships with key accounts, and possesses the operational expertise to deliver on promises we make to new clients. What makes you think Midwest clients would be willing to switch? Because we have been receiving inquiries. Thompson's changes have created service problems that major shippers are noticing. Amazon has privately expressed concerns about delivery reliability. Ford's parts distribution division has been evaluating alternative providers. 3 regional manufacturers have contacted us directly about our capabilities. Patricia showed me a list of companies that had approached Global Express in recent months. The names included several of Midwest's most profitable accounts, representing millions of dollars in annual revenue. The opportunity exists, Joanne. What we need is someone who can execute a client acquisition strategy with precision and integrity. Someone who understands the market, respects the clients, and can build relationships based on performance rather than promises. When would you need an answer? Today would be ideal. Thompson's operational problems are accelerating, and the Thanksgiving shipping season represents a critical window for demonstrating our superior capabilities. I considered the implications of Patricia's offer. Joining Global Express would not just provide financial security and professional respect. It would position me to actively compete against the company that had devalued my contributions. Thompson had wanted to eliminate my influence over Midwest's success. Patricia was offering me the opportunity to influence their competition instead. There is one more thing, Patricia added, sensing my contemplation. We recently learned that Derek Thompson suspended several critical operational protocols at Midwest, including weather monitoring and equipment maintenance schedules. Our meteorology consultants are predicting significant winter storm activity this week, right during their peak shipping period. That could cause serious problems. It could cause catastrophic problems, which creates an opportunity for Global Express to demonstrate superior service to clients who are about to experience significant disappointments with their current provider. Patricia's strategy was becoming clear. She was not just offering me a job, she was offering me the chance to lead a carefully planned campaign that would expose Midwest's weaknesses while showcasing Global Express's strengths. My knowledge of Midwest's vulnerabilities would be crucial to the timing and execution of this initiative. I need to know that you would be comfortable with this approach, Patricia said. Competing aggressively is business, but I want to ensure you feel good about the ethics of our strategy. Thompson chose to make me an adversary when he could have made me an ally. The consequences of that choice are his responsibility, not mine. Then do we have an agreement? I thought about my mother's advice regarding dignity versus security, about Thompson's plans to blame me for problems I had predicted, and about Derek's overconfident dismantling of systems I had spent years perfecting. The decision was remarkably easy. Yes, we do. Patricia smiled and extended her hand. Welcome to Global Express Vice President Reynolds. Your first assignment is to prepare a comprehensive analysis of Midwest's vulnerabilities and identify target clients for acquisition during their anticipated service failures. When do I start? Immediately. We have a lot of work to do before Thursday. As I left Global Express's headquarters, I felt a sense of purpose I had not experienced in months. Thompson had created this situation through his short-sighted leadership and personal vendettas. Now he was about to learn that underestimating expertise has consequences that extend far beyond hurt feelings and damaged morale. My phone buzzed with the weather alert: major winter storm approaching the Midwest, expected arrival Tuesday evening. Derek would be facing his first crisis as operations manager during the busiest shipping period of the year, with suspended protocols and no institutional knowledge to guide his responses. Perfect timing for Global Express to demonstrate why experience matters in the logistics industry. Tuesday morning arrived with ominous gray clouds building across the Midwest sky, exactly as the weather services had predicted. I sat in my new office at Global Express, monitoring multiple computer screens, displaying real-time shipping data, weather patterns, and customer service metrics from across the region. Patricia Williams had provided me with resources I had only dreamed of at Midwest: advanced forecasting software, direct communication with major clients, and a team of logistics professionals who actually understood the complexity of supply chain management. More importantly, I had access to industry intelligence that showed exactly how Midwest's operations were beginning to unravel. The storm system will hit Kansas City around 6 o'clock tonight, reported Jennifer, my new meteorology analyst. Sustained winds 40 miles per hour with ice accumulation expected on major highway corridors. Normal protocol would be to preposition equipment and adjust delivery routes by noon today. What is Midwest doing? According to our sources inside their operation, Derek Thompson suspended weather monitoring protocols last week. They are running full normal schedules with no adjustments for the incoming storm. I pulled up Midwest's customer service data, which Global Express monitored through industry-wide tracking systems. Their on-time delivery percentage had already dropped to 87%, down from the 96% average I had maintained during my tenure. Today's storm would expose just how dependent their success had been on operational expertise they no longer possessed. Jennifer patched me through to Marcus Chen at Ford's Parts Distribution Center. It is time to have a conversation about alternative shipping arrangements. The call lasted 20 minutes and resulted in Ford agreeing to test Global Express for their emergency parts shipments during the storm. Marcus had grown increasingly frustrated with Midwest's declining reliability and was eager to evaluate our weather response protocols. Similar conversations with Amazon's regional logistics coordinator and 3 manufacturing companies yielded comparable results. Word was spreading through the industry that Midwest's operational competence had declined significantly under Thompson's leadership, creating openness to competitive proposals that would not have been considered 6 months earlier. By noon, the first signs of crisis were appearing in Midwest's system. Derek had scheduled maximum throughput for the Kansas City hub, ignoring both weather forecasts and equipment maintenance requirements. The automated sorting machinery, which I knew required recalibration every 72 hours during peak periods, had been running continuously for 5 days without proper servicing. At 1:15, the inevitable occurred. Midwest's primary sorting system experienced a catastrophic failure, jamming completely during their highest volume period. Packages began backing up throughout the facility as Derek frantically searched for solutions to problems he did not understand. Ms. Reynolds, we are receiving distress calls from several Midwest clients, reported David, my customer service manager. They are asking if Global Express can handle emergency shipments when Midwest fails to meet their commitments. Accept every request that we can realistically fulfill. Make sure our performance is flawless. By 3 o'clock, Midwest's problems had multiplied beyond Derek's ability to manage. The sorting system remained down. Packages were scattered throughout their facility without proper tracking, and customer complaints were flooding their service lines. Worse, Derek had ignored warnings about ice formation on loading dock surfaces, resulting in 2 minor injuries and a temporary shutdown by OSHA inspectors. Thompson finally called me directly at 4:30, desperation evident in his voice, despite his attempt to maintain professional composure. Joanne, I know you have moved on to other opportunities, but I wonder if you might consider consulting with us temporarily during this operational difficulty. What kind of difficulty are you experiencing? Some equipment malfunctions and weather-related logistics challenges, nothing that cannot be resolved with proper expertise. I could hear chaos in the background, shouting voices, mechanical alarms, and what sounded like Derek arguing with someone about sorting procedures he clearly did not understand. I appreciate the offer, Bradley, but my consulting availability is extremely limited. Global Express keeps me quite busy with strategic initiatives. Global Express. His voice cracked slightly. You are working for Patricia Williams. I am Vice President of Regional Operations. We have been very busy responding to increased demand from clients seeking more reliable service. The silence on Thompson's end lasted nearly 10 seconds. When he spoke again, the desperation was unmistakable. Joanne, what would it take to bring you back temporarily, double your previous salary, triple it? My commitment to Global Express is exclusive and long-term. However, I wish you the best resolving your current challenges. I hung up feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. Thompson was discovering that expertise cannot be easily replaced, especially when that expertise chooses to work for your primary competitor. The storm hit Kansas City precisely as predicted, bringing ice, high winds, and dangerous driving conditions. Global Express, following protocols I had helped develop that very afternoon, had preemptively adjusted routes and repositioned equipment to minimize disruptions. Our deliveries continued smoothly, while Midwest's operations ground to a complete halt. Wednesday morning brought reports of total system failure at Midwest Logistics. Their Kansas City hub remained paralyzed by equipment failures, weather damage, and the complete absence of emergency response protocols. Packages that should have been delivered Monday were still sitting in damaged sorting systems. Customer service representatives were fielding hundreds of complaint calls without any realistic timeline for resolution. Derek had attempted to restart the sorting machinery without proper diagnostics, causing additional damage that would require specialized technicians and replacement parts. Thompson was reportedly screaming at maintenance crews, who explained that the equipment needed the servicing schedules Derek had eliminated. Meanwhile, Global Express was gaining new clients hourly. Amazon diverted 30% of their Midwest shipping to us after Midwest missed critical delivery commitments. Ford's parts division signed an emergency contract worth $200,000 monthly. 3 regional manufacturers, fed up with delayed shipments affecting their production schedules, switched their logistics contracts entirely. "The numbers are remarkable," Patricia told me during our noon strategy meeting. "In 36 hours, we have acquired approximately $4 million in annual revenue from Midwest clients seeking reliable alternatives. How are our operations handling the increased volume?" "Flawlessly. Your advanced planning and protocol development have allowed us to scale up seamlessly while maintaining service quality." Meanwhile, industry reports suggest Midwest losses could exceed $5 million when all delays and cancellations are calculated. Thursday brought news that Midwest had declared force majeure on hundreds of shipping contracts, claiming weather-related failures beyond their control. The declaration was technically legal, but professionally devastating, confirming to the industry that Thompson's management had rendered the company incapable of handling routine operational challenges. Derek finally admitted publicly that he could not resolve the equipment failures, requesting emergency assistance from the manufacturer's technical team. The repair process would require shutting down operations entirely for 72 hours during the peak shipping week of the year. Thompson made one final desperate call Thursday evening. "Joanne, the board is asking questions about our operational difficulties. If you would consider returning as Senior Operations Director, I am authorized to offer you full executive compensation and equity participation." What happened to Derek's position? Derek has decided to pursue other opportunities more suited to his background. I see. And what assurance would I have that similar management changes would not affect me in the future? The pause told me everything I needed to know. Thompson had no authority to make meaningful commitments, and the board was likely considering replacing him as well. Global Express values expertise and treats professionals with the respect they deserve, I replied. I am very happy with my current position. Friday brought the final numbers. Midwest Logistics had lost $5.4 million during the week through canceled contracts, penalty payments, emergency shipping costs, and equipment repairs. More damaging than the financial impact was the reputational damage from failing to meet commitments during the industry's most critical period. Global Express, by contrast, had gained 6 new major accounts and earned recognition from the Regional Logistics Association for operational excellence during challenging conditions. My weather response protocols and equipment maintenance schedules, dismissed by Derek as unnecessary complications, had proven their value precisely when expertise mattered most. Thompson's regime had lasted exactly 8 weeks. The board of directors announced his termination Friday afternoon, along with a comprehensive operational review to determine how such failures could be prevented in the future. Derek's consulting contract was canceled without compensation. As I reviewed the week's developments from my corner office at Global Express, I thought about my mother's wisdom regarding storms and navigation. Thompson had created the storm through his arrogance and incompetence, but he had not anticipated that the person he tried to destroy possessed both the expertise to weather it and the strategic position to ensure he suffered the most damage. 14 years of institutional knowledge properly applied had proven more valuable than nepotism, cost-cutting, and management by intimidation. The student had indeed become the teacher, and the lesson was complete. 6 months after leaving Midwest Logistics, I received a call that provided the perfect conclusion to an imperfect chapter in my career. The voice on the phone belonged to Robert Martinez, president of the American Logistics Professionals Association. "Joanne, I am pleased to inform you that you have been selected as this year's recipient of the Excellence in Operations Management Award. Your innovative response protocols and client acquisition strategy at Global Express have set new industry standards. The award ceremony took place in Chicago with representatives from logistics companies across the nation. As I accepted the crystal trophy, I spotted familiar faces in the audience, including several former Midwest colleagues who had found new positions after Thompson's collapse. Patricia Williams introduced me to the gathering, highlighting accomplishments that Thompson had dismissed as outdated thinking. Joanne's weather response protocols prevented an estimated $12 million in industry-wide delays during last year's early winter storm. Her equipment maintenance schedules have been adopted by logistics companies throughout the Midwest. Most importantly, her ethical leadership during a challenging transition demonstrated that professional excellence and personal integrity are not just compatible, but inseparable. The recognition felt wonderful, but it paled in comparison to personal developments that mattered far more than professional accolades. My mother's new medication, covered by Global Express's comprehensive health plan, had successfully slowed her Alzheimer's progression. She was alert and engaged during our weekly dinners, still offering wisdom that guided my decisions, both personal and professional. "I am so proud of you," she said during our most recent visit. "Not because of the awards or the salary, but because you chose self-respect over security. That takes courage most people never develop." Global Express had thrived beyond Patricia's most optimistic projections. Our client acquisition strategy had generated $32 million in new revenue, making us the dominant logistics provider throughout the Midwest. The company was planning expansion into eastern markets, with me leading the development effort. Most satisfying, however, was the transformation that occurred within Midwest logistics after Thompson's departure. The board had hired Elizabeth Chen, former regional director, from a Texas logistics firm, as the new CEO. Elizabeth's first actions included rehiring Frank Rodriguez and Janet Walsh, restoring their original salaries with additional compensation for the months of reduced pay they had endured. Elizabeth called me personally to request consulting advice on rebuilding Midwest's operational systems. "Joanne, we need to repair the damage Thompson caused, and frankly, you understand our vulnerabilities better than anyone. Would you consider helping us design better protocols?" The conversation was respectful and professional, acknowledging both my expertise and the wrongs that had been committed. While I declined the consulting opportunity due to competitive conflicts, I provided general recommendations for equipment maintenance and emergency response planning that could help them serve their remaining clients effectively. "One more thing," Elizabeth added before ending our call. "The board asked me to formally apologize for Thompson's treatment of you and other employees. We found documentation of his harassment campaign, and we want you to know that such behavior does not represent Midwest's values or standards." The apology was meaningful but unnecessary. Thompson's actions had inadvertently created the opportunity for me to join Global Express, advance my career beyond what would have been possible at Midwest, and demonstrate capabilities I had never been allowed to fully utilize under his predecessor's more conservative leadership. Derek Thompson, meanwhile, had returned to retail management at his former sporting goods store in Ohio. According to LinkedIn, he was no longer listing strategic consultant on his resume, apparently having learned that confidence without competence creates problems that extend far beyond hurt feelings. Bradley Thompson's fate was less clear, though. Industry sources suggested he was struggling to find executive positions after the spectacular failure of his Midwest tenure. Potential employers were apparently concerned about hiring someone whose management decisions had caused such dramatic operational and financial losses. As I reflected on the entire experience while preparing my acceptance speech for the Logistics Award ceremony, several crucial lessons had emerged from those challenging months. First, expertise cannot be faked or easily replaced. Thompson's assumption that logistics management was simple enough for anyone to handle had been spectacularly disproven. 14 years of accumulated knowledge developed through experience with countless operational challenges provided value that could not be substituted with enthusiasm or family connections. Second, loyalty should flow in both directions. My dedication to Midwest had been genuine and productive, but Thompson's leadership had made clear that the company no longer valued that dedication appropriately. Walking away from one-sided loyalty was not betrayal, but self-respect. Third, sometimes the most powerful response to professional bullying is strategic disengagement. Thompson's plan had depended on my remaining available as a scapegoat for his failures. Removing myself from his timeline had forced him to face consequences without convenient excuses. Fourth, expertise applied strategically can create opportunities that transcend immediate circumstances. Joining Global Express had not just provided better compensation and working conditions. It had positioned me to lead initiatives that advanced my career far beyond what would have been possible staying at Midwest. Finally, dignity is indeed worth more than security, as my mother had wisely observed. The temporary financial uncertainty of leaving Midwest had been far less damaging than the long-term psychological cost of accepting Thompson's disrespectful treatment. Standing before my industry peers, holding an award that recognized achievements Thompson had dismissed as irrelevant, I felt profound gratitude for the courage to walk away from a situation that was destroying my professional self-worth. His salary cut had been intended as punishment, but had ultimately become liberation. The speech I delivered that evening focused on the importance of recognizing and developing operational expertise within logistics organizations. But privately, my message was simpler. When someone shows you they do not value your contributions, believe them and respond accordingly. 6 months later, I was promoted to Senior Vice President at Global Express, with responsibility for national operations development. My mother continued responding well to her treatment, maintaining cognitive function that allowed us to share meaningful conversations about family career and life lessons learned through adversity. Thompson's chapter in my story had ended with his firing, but my story was just beginning. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you creates space for the best thing that could happen to you. The key is recognizing the difference between temporary storms and permanent damage, then navigating accordingly. As I often told my team at Global Express, expertise properly valued creates mutual prosperity. But expertise undervalued creates competitive advantages for organizations wise enough to recognize its worth. Thompson had provided an expensive but thorough education in that fundamental business principle. The logistics industry is complex, demanding, and absolutely dependent on people who understand its intricacies. Companies succeed when they recognize and nurture that understanding. Companies fail when they assume it can be easily replaced or simply ignored. Bradley Thompson learned that lesson too late to save his career. I learned it just in time to transform mine. Have you ever faced a situation where walking away felt impossible but staying felt worse? What gave you the courage to choose dignity over security? Even when the future seemed uncertain, I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with your own experiences of workplace challenges and professional growth, please like this video and share it with others who might benefit from these lessons. Your support helps me continue sharing stories that explore the real-world complexities of career navigation and personal development. Thank you for taking this journey with me through one of the most challenging and ultimately transformative periods of my professional life. Remember that your expertise has value, your dignity matters, and sometimes the courage to walk away leads to opportunities you never imagined possible. Until next time, trust your instincts, value your contributions, and never let anyone convince you that loyalty means accepting disrespect. You deserve better, and better is always possible when you have the wisdom to recognize it and the courage to pursue it.